Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Thursday, June 9th, 2022. Coming up, a preview of tonight's hearing of the House Select Committee on the investigation of the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol from a Democratic member of that committee on what will be revealed. She says people who wanted to attack the system of our government and our democracy. From the House Republican leader, who criticizes the committee as illegitimate, political, and divisive. U.S. House passing a bill to let family members and police ask a judge to keep firearms away from someone who is a threat to self or others. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says there will be a vote next week on a bill to enhance security of Supreme Court justices and their families, but House and Senate Republican leaders wanted it to pass this week following the arrest of a man threatening to kill Justice Brett Kavanaugh. The key holdup in the negotiations whether to expand the bill to include Supreme Court clerks and staff and their families. President Joe Biden at the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles promoting cooperation with Western Hemisphere countries on migration, economic growth, and addressing climate change. And the White House laying out a plan to distribute COVID-19 vaccines to children under 5 years old once the government health agencies give their authorization, which could be soon. Some meetings scheduled for next week. This from NBC News. The House January 6th committee is raising expectations for its first public hearing Thursday, saying the primetime event will be packed with new video, audio, and other information proving that former President Donald Trump was at the heart of the attack. The hearing, scheduled for 90 minutes, starts at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can listen live here on C-SPAN Radio. It'll be on C-SPAN television as well, streamed at cspan.org. You can follow it on the C-SPAN Now mobile video app, or listen on your smart speaker, say play C-SPAN Radio. One of the committee members, Elaine Luria, Democrat from Virginia, giving a preview this morning on MSNBC.
This is the introduction of the committee to the public of the work that we've been doing over almost a year. As you've mentioned earlier, we've interviewed over 1,000 people. We have over 140,000 documents. It's been really an extensive investigation, a detailed investigation, and this will essentially be the opening statement of the committee's presentation of that information to the public. And I think that everyone should pay attention to this. I think that, where I stand right now on January 6th was overrun with rioters, violent people who wanted to attack the system of our government and our democracy and stop the certification of the election results that were happening just a few feet away. But it wasn't just about that day. It wasn't just about that violence. It was about all the things that led up to it. It was about all of those forces and factors that led to a point where violence was the tool that was used to influence the government. And, I think that we really need to understand what continues today, the threat that still exists moving forward. And I know that our hearings over the next few weeks will really lay that all out for the American public.
Good morning, Congresswoman. This obviously is critical. It's important. You all have new information, new interviews, new documents that you will present to the American people who will be tuned in tonight. But it is, at the end of the day, a political exercise. You'll prepare a report, and that'll be that. What do you hope follows from this? Based on everything you know now, everything you've seen, things many of us haven't even seen yet, do you hope there will be criminal prosecutions at the end of these hearings and after you submit your report?
I hope that the way that we display this information to the public through the course of these hearings will make it abundantly clear that there was truly a conspiracy at play here, that all levers of government were being used to try to subvert the results of the election, to try to keep the former president in office. And, as we move forward with these hearings, the committee will make recommendations that we can use to try to prevent something like this from happening in the future. And, as the hearings progress, I think that the committee will make the recommendations that are appropriate relative to the information that we've gathered.
Congresswoman Elaine Luria, Democrat from Virginia, member of the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, on MSNBC Thursday morning. Again, the hearing beginning tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, live on the C-SPAN networks. The House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy of California giving his own assessment of the hearing. He held a news conference in the U.S. Capitol.
Speaker Pelosi's Select Committee on January 6th is unlike any other committee in American history. In fact, it is the most political and least legitimate committee in American history. It has used congressional subpoenas to attack Republicans, violate due process, and infringe on the political speech of private citizens. It has actually been caught altering evidence, including the text messages of our ranking member, Jim Jordan. It has permanently damaged the House and divided this country. And let's be honest, it is a smokescreen for Democrats to push their radical agenda. You read it in Axios just this week. The battles internally, because what do they want to do? They want to federalize the elections, and they're talking about their real outcome of what they want to achieve, abolish the Electoral College. All the while that the Democrats are ignoring really what is affecting the American people. The highest inflation in more than 40 years. Record high gas prices. Doubled since President Biden has taken office. Lack of baby formula. Unsecure border. Fentanyl coming across. Now the #1 killer of Americans between the ages of 18 and 45. Now let's be very clear. The violence at the Capitol that day was wrong, and we have repeatedly denounced it. But keeping the Capitol safe is not the point of Pelosi's illegitimate Select Committee. From the beginning, the Select Committee refused to investigate the real circumstances that led to the riot, including the lack of security around the Capitol. They also ignored the left-wing mob violence, which led to riots and loss of life across the country that summer. When House Republicans proposed investigating these facts, as you'll remember, on January 12th, we put it to the floor and every single Democrat voted no. When I sent Pelosi a letter after they voted no, she did not respond for 3 months. Then she jumped to create a Select Committee. Not only that, she rejected the minority's picks to be on the committee. That's going against 232 years of a tradition in this House. You reject the minority to have a say in the committee.
The House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, at a news conference on Capitol Hill. The 2 Republican members that he's referring to that he appointed to the committee, or tried to, but Speaker Nancy Pelosi rejected them, Jim Banks of Indiana and Jim Jordan of Ohio. After Leader McCarthy pulled his other 3 appointments then because of those 2 not being allowed to be put on, Speaker Pelosi appointed 2 Republican members by herself, Liz Cheney of Wyoming and Adam Kinzinger of Illinois. Congressman Banks also at today's news conference with the leader and talked about the questions he says that the House Republicans are asking in their own investigation of the events of January 6, 2021.
Speaker Pelosi doesn't really want a real investigation into January 6th. That's why her sergeant at arms refused to cooperate with a bipartisan Senate committee investigation. She was afraid of what they would uncover. But House Republicans continued to conduct our own ad hoc investigation into January 6th. Our goal is to answer the questions that this Select Committee is ignoring. Questions that you're not going to hear about on the primetime special tonight. Questions that must be answered to keep Congress and the Capitol Police officers safe in the future. And here are the questions that you should be demanding answers from the Select Committee members as well. First of all, how is it possible that the Capitol Police, we now know, was half-staffed because of COVID on January 6th? Second, why were our officers under-equipped on that day? Why were some officers forced to face down a riot without helmets or expired equipment? Why were the Capitol Police officers never trained to handle a riot, even after all of the riots that were ongoing in Washington, D.C. and our nation's capital in the summer of 2020? Did Speaker Pelosi communicate with the House Sergeant at Arms on January 6th or in the days leading up to the riot? Why didn't the Capitol Police's intelligence unit raise the alarm about potential violence when they had intelligence going back weeks before January 6th that told them that something was going to happen? Why did the FBI deploy commandos to Quantico on January 3rd with shoot-to-kill authority, but fail to send the United States Capitol Police a single threat assessment or intelligence bulletin? Was Speaker Pelosi involved in the decision to delay National Guard assistance on January 6th? Those are serious and real questions that this committee refuses to even ask. Speaker Pelosi doesn't want to answer those questions because she knows that the answers to those questions leave a trail of breadcrumbs right back to her office, underscoring her negligence, her lack of leadership as the Speaker of the House.
Congressman Jim Banks, Republican from Indiana, at a news conference in the U.S. Capitol, along with other House Republican leaders. Former President Donald Trump with a statement today sent out via his Save America PAC, calling the House Select Committee the unselect committee of political thugs. And he said what happened on January 6, 2021 was the greatest movement in the history of the U.S. aimed at making America great again. He also continued to push the claim that the 2020 election was rigged and that he really beat Joe Biden. President Joe Biden today at the Summit of the Americas having a one-on-one meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, spending the first minute as they spoke to reporters talking about tonight's hearing.
Before I begin, one of the things that's going to occupy my country tonight, I suspect, is the first open hearings on January the 6th. And as I said when it was occurring and subsequent, I think it was a clear, flagrant violation of the Constitution. I think these guys and women broke the law, tried to turn around the result of an election. And there's a lot of questions: who's responsible, who's involved. I'm not going to make a judgment on that, but I just want you to know that we're going to probably be, a lot of Americans are going to be seeing for the first time some of the detail that occurred. But you and I have a lot to talk about.
President Joe Biden, his first minute as he sat down with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the Summit of the Americas out in Los Angeles. Tonight's hearing of the House Select Committee and investigation of the attack on the January 6th attack on the Capitol, 8 p.m. Eastern. Two witnesses scheduled, a Capitol Police officer, Caroline Edwards, who was injured by the rioters, and a filmmaker, Nick Quested, who captured some of the first violence that happened that day. 8 p.m. Eastern, live on the C-SPAN network, C-SPAN radio, C-SPAN television, cspan.org, the C-SPAN video app, and you can listen on your smart speaker. Say, play C-SPAN radio. This is Washington Today. From Fox News, the House of Representatives passed legislation Thursday that will allow U.S. judges to seize firearms from someone deemed in imminent danger to themselves or others. The Federal Extreme Risk Protection Order Act passed on a vote of 224 to 202, with 5 Republicans breaking ranks and voting in favor of the bill. The bill will also allow judges to prevent individuals from purchasing firearms under the same circumstances. Sponsor of the bill on the House floor, Congresswoman Lucy McBath, Democrat from Georgia.
I rise today in support of my bill, the Federal Extreme Risk Protection Order Act, a bill that would empower loved ones and law enforcement to help prevent mass shootings before they happen. Every family and every community in our nation deserves access to these life-saving measures. No child, no parent deserves to live in fear of gun violence. And we are paying for it. We're paying for this gun violence every single day. Day after day, hour after hour, we're paying for the weapons of war on our streets with the blood of our children in our schools. We are paying for the unfettered access with mothers and fathers waiting in line for a DNA test, forced to find out if it's their child that's riddled with bullets and maimed beyond recognition, if it's their child whose blood now blankets the floor of the classroom where they should be learning math and science and English. We are paying for this deadly gun culture with the lives of American people, with the lives of those that we in this body took an oath to protect. The American people are absolutely exhausted. We cannot continue to be the only country in the world where we let gun violence happen again and again and again. An entire generation is growing up learning that the adults that they look up to cannot, or rather not choose to, protect them. Now, we all agree that this status quo is unacceptable. We all understand that the murder of our children cannot continue. We need policies that will give our law enforcement the tools that they need, the tools they have asked for to help keep guns out of the hands of those who are a danger to themselves or to others.
Congresswoman Lucy McBath, Democrat from Georgia, on the House floor during debate on her red flag law, which would allow family members and police officers to ask judges to put in place either a 14-day or 180-day ban on possession or purchase of firearms on someone who poses an immediate threat to others or to him or herself. Speaking in opposition to the bill, Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, Republican from Arizona.
I have 5 grandchildren. I would do anything to protect my 5 grandchildren, including, as a last resort, shooting them if I had to protect the lives of my grandchildren. Democrat bills that we've heard this week want to take away my right to protect my grandchildren. They want to take away the rights of law-abiding citizens to protect their own children and grandchildren and wives and brothers and sisters. This bill takes away due process from law-abiding citizens. Can you imagine if you had a disgruntled ex or somebody who hates you because of your political views, and they go to a judge and say, oh, this person is dangerous, and that judge would take away your guns, lean on the side of conservatism, take away the guns, without that person even having a knowledge that there was a court hearing that would take away their guns. This is wrong. When Republicans were in the majority, we actually passed legislation that was signed into law that would have prevented mass shootings. These bills would not. We need to join together, Republicans and Democrats. I hope they can do it in the Senate and get something done that actually saves children's lives. And with that, I yield back.
Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, Republican from Arizona, on the House floor. This bill did pass. The vote again, 224 to 202, and the 5 Republicans joined the Democrats in voting yes. Fred Upton of Michigan, Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, Anthony Gonzalez of Ohio, Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania, and Chris Jacobs from New York. The bill now goes to the Senate, where it will join the other anti-gun violence bills that the House passed Wednesday night, a package that includes raising the minimum age for buying an AR-15 style rifle from 18 to 21, banning magazines with more than 15 rounds, and creating federal crimes for gun trafficking and straw purchases of firearms. That package Wednesday night passing on a vote of 223 to 204. The same 5 Republicans that voted yes today voted yes last night. But last night, 2 Democrats voted no, Jared Golden of Maine and Kurt Schrader of Oregon. As Congresswoman Lesko mentioned, a small group of Democratic and Republican senators are continuing to meet to try to reach a bipartisan response to the recent mass shootings in Texas and New York, something that can get a filibuster-proof 60 votes in the Senate. The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, with a status report today on the Senate floor.
Right now, the Senate is trying to break that streak of inaction, the 30-year streak of inaction since we were able to pass Brady and the assault weapons ban, by working towards meaningful legislation on gun violence. Yesterday, a bipartisan group of Democrats and Republicans met again to continue working towards a bipartisan compromise. This morning, my colleague, Senator Murphy, reported that the group is making good progress, and they hope to get something real done very soon. As soon as the bipartisan group comes to agreement, I want to bring a measure to the floor for a vote as quickly as possible. The overwhelming consensus of our caucus, of gun safety advocates, and of the American people is that getting something real done on gun violence is worth pursuing, even if we cannot get everything that we know we need. The work of curing our nation of mass shootings will continue well after this debate concludes. But at this moment, we have a moral obligation to try for real progress, because taking tangible steps to reduce gun violence is critically important. Americans are sick and tired of going through the same grieving cycle over and over again, only for Congress to do nothing. They are enraged that even after shootings in Sandy Hook, Parkland, San Bernardino, El Paso, Boulder, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, and so many others, that nothing has changed. We hope this time around something will change at last. I hope that very soon we can see a deal come together. I encourage my colleagues to keep their talks going so we can act on it very quickly.
The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer on the Senate floor today. He mentioned Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, the lead negotiator for the Democrats in this bipartisan Senate gun violence talks going on. The lead on the Republican side is John Cornyn of Texas. He also spoke on the Senate floor today.
We're all sickened by these shootings, and we're hyper aware of the public interest. The most common refrain I hear is, do something. Do something. Unfortunately, it gets a little less specific after that, what exactly should be done. And that's where the hard work begins. But as before, I'm optimistic that we can find something that protects the rights of law-abiding citizens under our Constitution, under the Second Amendment, who I believe are not a threat to public safety, and focus on people with criminal records, people with mental health challenges, like young Salvador Ramos in Uvalde, Texas, like Adam Lanza at Sandy Hook. The profile is pretty well established. Young, alienated, disaffected, mentally challenged boys who lack access to treatment, which will help them manage their mental illness, and who descend into a pit of despair, ultimately resulting in their desire not only to harm themselves, but to take other people with them. That profile is well established in the scientific literature, and the New York Times did an excellent piece a couple of weeks ago on that profile. And so I think that gives us a little bit of a roadmap for the sorts of things we might do to deal with that. What makes this more challenging than, for example, the Fix NICS bill after Sutherland Springs is that was a single point of failure. Here we see multiple points of failure. And I think we need to address as many as we can.
Senator John Cornyn, Republican, on the Senate floor today. A Reuters story includes this. About a dozen lawmakers, led by Democratic Senator Chris Murphy and Republican Senator John Cornyn, are trying to find common ground on a plan that would bolster school security, address gaps in the U.S. mental health system, and keep guns out of the hands of criminals and individuals deemed to be a danger to the public or themselves. Murphy told reporters that his aim was to pass legislation that could stem the tide of shooting death in America before the Senate breaks for the July 4th holiday at the end of the month. He said this would be a big historic deal, and we need to get it right. Washington Today continues in a moment.
After months of closed-door investigations, the House January 6 committee is set to go public. Tune in as committee members question key witnesses about what transpired and why during the assault on the U.S. Capitol. Watch our live coverage beginning tonight at 8 Eastern on C-SPAN, C-SPAN Now, our free mobile video app, or anytime online at cspan.org. C-SPAN, your unfiltered view of government.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile video app and wherever you get your podcasts. From CNN.com, the House will consider a Senate-passed bill to enhance security for Supreme Court justices and their families next week, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said Thursday, after a man was arrested near Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home. Though the legislation passed the Senate by unanimous consent in May, it has stalled in the House, angering some lawmakers who have stressed the urgent need for it. It is still unclear if the House will want to amend the bill to include protection for clerks and other staff, as some lawmakers previously indicated. That reporting from CNN. Speaker Pelosi questioned about this during her weekly briefing.
I was wondering what the status of the Senate bill to protect Supreme Court justices is
Yeah.
in the House.
Well,
Your thoughts on Justice Kavanaugh?
Right, we had, well, the justices are protected, as you all know. We were awaiting language from the Senate so that we could be completely up to date as to what they wanted to do. That's in the works. Mr. Hoyer's running that show, and if we had hoped that we could do it today, but we certainly will do it at the beginning of next week. Yeah.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi at a news conference today referring to Congressman Steny Hoyer, the House Majority Leader. That question to the Speaker was in the middle of her briefing. As the briefing ended, as she was walking out of the room, she got another reporter's question on this topic, and she stopped and answered.
How can you say that the justices are protected when there was an attempt on Justice Kavanaugh's life? You said the justices are protected, but there was an attempt on Justice Kavanaugh's life.
It's protected. The justices are protected. This issue is not about the justices. It's about staff and the rest. The justices are protected. You saw the Attorney General even double down on that.
But this is about security for the justices. An armed man showed up near Justice Kavanaugh's house to try to...
We're working together on the bill that the Senate will be able to approve of, because that's what, we can pass whatever we want here. We want it to be able to pass the Senate. So I don't know what you're talking about, because evidently you haven't seen what the debate is, and not debate, but what the language is. There will be a bill, but nobody is in danger over the weekend because of our not having a bill.
Thank you.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi at the end of her news conference. On the House floor today, the Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican from California, tried unsuccessfully to call up and pass what the Senate has passed on Supreme Court security, that is, enhanced protections for the justices and their families.
Just yesterday, a man who wanted to kill Justice Kavanaugh was arrested outside the justice's home. He was arrested with weapons on his person. Justice Kavanaugh has a wife and children. Yes, he does. The Senate already passed a bill with agreement from 100 senators to enhance the security protection for members of the court and their families. And Madam Speaker, it has sat here for a month. A month. Yet yesterday, House Democrats are leaving. Today they want to leave for a long weekend. They gave tomorrow back. I spoke to the Majority Leader this morning. I told him nobody on this side would object. A unanimous consent. He could run that bill on the floor right now and send it to the President so we could protect the Supreme Court. How many times do they have to be threatened? How many people have to be arrested with a gun outside their home? What would have happened had he not called 9/11? He didn't just have a gun, he had zip ties. But somehow you want to leave. This bill could be on the President's desk right now. Now think about this. This is coming from the same party whose White House press secretary said this, and I quote, encouraged protests outside the justices' homes. She even said that was the President Biden's position. And let's not forget what Majority Leader Schumer, screaming on the steps of the Supreme Court, what did he say? Madam Speaker, I want you to listen to these words. And I want you to think about these words. What do you think the American public would think Schumer was telling them to do? He said, you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. Now, I don't know if that young man yesterday with that gun and zip ties that was at the home of Justice Kavanaugh, if he listened to this, and that's why he went, I don't know. But I do know that is wrong. I do know we can change that. I do know we can protect them. That bill has been sitting here for 1 month. I talked to the majority leader today. The only idea people have, well, let's change it. What does it mean if it's changed? It means it goes back to the Senate and waits longer. Why? Why would we do that?
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy on the House floor today. Bloomberg Law also reporting that the Senate Judiciary Committee Chair, Dick Durbin, Democrat from Illinois, pushing for passage of another bill that would shield federal judges' personal online information. The suspect arrested outside Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home, telling investigators that he found the address online, according to the criminal complaint. But the bill from Senator Dick Durbin is being blocked by Senator Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky, who wants to include shielding personal information of members of Congress as well. This from Reuters, Dateline Los Angeles. President Joe Biden announced on Wednesday a proposed new U.S. economic partnership with Latin America aimed at countering China's growing clout as he kicked off a regional summit marred by discord and snubs over the guest list. Hosting the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles, Biden sought to assure the assembled leaders about his administration's commitment to the region, despite nagging concerns that Washington at times is still trying to dictate to its poorer southern neighbors. That from Reuters. Well, President Biden today speaking at the CEO Summit of the Americas, the official private sector partner of that other summit.
As I said last night, the United States is prepared to put new capital in the Inter-American Development Bank's private sector lending arm, the IDB Invest, to help catalyze the flow of private capital into the region, especially to support startups, digital connectivity, and renewable energy and health. For example, we need to make it easier for countries in Latin America and the Caribbean to develop their 5G infrastructure without having to choose between investing in their digital future or renewable energy structure. To be able to do both, we need to unlock the financing so both can be done at the same time. We want to make sure our closest neighbors have a real choice between the debt-trap development that has become more and more common in the region, and the high-quality, transparent approach to infrastructure and investment that delivers lasting gains for workers and their families. And by working through the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation to lower the risk around these kinds of investments, support policy reforms, and improve investment in climate in countries. The climate of investment in these countries, and level the playing field. We're going to open up new areas of private sector investors that are not only economically viable, but are highly desirable. You know, over the course of this summit, the governments are coming together to make significant concrete commitments across a range of issues vital to achieving sustainable and equitable growth throughout the region. On bringing supply chains closer to home, on fostering innovation and developing a shared framework for our digital future, on kicking our action on climate change into high gear and speeding our clean energy transition, on bolstering health systems and food security in the Western Hemisphere, on managing safe and orderly migration as a shared responsibility through innovative and coordinated action to enforce our borders and stabilize migrant populations while seizing a shared opportunity for economic growth. My challenge to all of you is, if you step up and play a bigger role in driving inclusive, sustainable, equitable growth in the 21st century, a lot's going to happen.
President Joe Biden speaking to the 4th CEO Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles, which is meeting alongside the 9th Summit of the Americas, which brings together heads of state and governments from North, Central, and South America. Wall Street today, the Dow down 638, NASDAQ down 332, S&P down 97. CNBC explains the slide for stocks comes ahead of the May Consumer Price Index report on Friday. Investors are looking to see if inflation has peaked or if the Federal Reserve will need to be even more aggressive to tamp down price increases. White House announcing a plan to distribute COVID-19 vaccines for the youngest children once those vaccines are authorized for that age group. An FDA advisory committee is scheduled to meet next week. Today, Health and Human Services Assistant Secretary for Preparedness, Dawn O'Connell, joining the White House COVID-19 virtual briefing.
Our objective is clear: to be ready to swiftly and efficiently deliver vaccines for kids under the age of 5 to communities nationwide as soon as the FDA grants emergency use authorization. We are ready. To achieve our objective, we have engaged state, local, tribal, and territorial health departments, pediatricians and primary care providers, children's hospitals and health systems, and pharmacies on operational planning. These are many of the same partners we've been engaged with on other vaccination and COVID-19 response efforts over the past few years. These partners are on the front lines and critical to success, and we stand ready to help them in any way we can. Last week, we opened up pre-ordering for states, tribes, territories, and other partners to order doses. We are making 10 million doses of vaccine available initially, with millions more available in the coming weeks. This approach allows us to seed communities with enough vaccine so that it is readily accessible and equitably distributed across the country. We estimate that 85% of children under the age of 5 live within 5 miles of a potential vaccination site. We have asked states and other partners to leverage prior pediatric vaccination best practices and tap into existing pediatric vaccination locations as they continue to sign up additional pediatricians and providers. We have also asked states and other partners to ensure equity, giving priority to sites that will vaccinate children at highest risk for severe COVID-19 disease and considering factors such as hours of operation.
Dawn O'Connell is Health and Human Services Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response at a White House COVID-19 virtual briefing today. Yahoo Finance reports that the Pfizer and BioNTech companies have applied for authorization of a vaccine for kids 5 and under, while Moderna's is for ages 6 and under, and the FDA and CDC advisory committees are both holding meetings next week on this. More from today's White House briefing, reporter asking the White House COVID-19 response coordinator, Dr. Ashish Jha, about how many parents will choose to have their young children vaccinated once the vaccines are available.
I know you're going to do everything you can to get as many kids vaccinated in this age group as possible. Do you expect the adoption rate to be similar to the 5 to 11-year-olds, where I think the numbers are around a third of 5 to 11-year-olds have gotten their first doses? Do you expect it to be higher or lower with this youngest age group?
Well, let me start off with a couple of thoughts on this, and then I'd love Dr. Murthy to talk about it as well. 2 things. First is our job, first and foremost, is to make sure that these vaccines are widely available and highly accessible. Right? That is number one. We've got to make sure that happens. Again, all of this and everything we're talking about today is with the assumption that FDA and CDC authorize these. So let's set that aside. That's going to be the critical part. But assuming they do, first and foremost, we're going to make sure that in the days and weeks that follow any CDC recommendation, we make these vaccines widely available, highly accessible, so that parents can get their kids vaccinated. Now, second important point is if you go back to December of 2020 and look at surveys that were done of adults, about a third of adults said they would go out and get vaccinated right away. What we know now is about 80% of adults have gotten at least 1 shot. A reminder that these things take time, that vaccine confidence builds over time. It builds with trusted voices, physicians, faith leaders, others, helping people get vaccinated. This is not a one and done. This is not an automatic. That's what we have seen for kids 12 and above. We're continuing to see that with kids 5 to 11. And we expect that to be an ongoing journey for kids under 5. So I remain very optimistic that we're going to get more and more children vaccinated and protected over time. But we don't have any internal targets of what that number should look like after a week or after 3 weeks or after a month.
Dr. Ashish Jha is the White House COVID-19 response coordinator at today's virtual White House COVID briefing. And finally, on Washington today, the National Basketball Association finals underway. Boston Celtics leading the Golden State Warriors 2-1 in the best-of-7 series. Right before Wednesday night's game, which Boston won, Senator Ed Markey, Democrat from Massachusetts, tweeted, Congressman Ro Khanna, Democrat from California, I saw 13 Celtics championships before you were born. I'm ready to watch them come back for Banner 18. Here's my bet. Are you in? He included this video.
Ro, I'm challenging you. Celtics versus Warriors. But we know the Celtics are going to win because they're the greatest team of all time. But if we lose, I'll send you some Dunkin' Donuts. But I think it's a slam dunk. Celtics tonight and for the series.
Senator Ed Markey wearing a Boston Celtics jersey and dunking a small basketball into a miniature hoop. A short time later, Congressman Ro Khanna, wearing a Golden State Warriors cap, tweeted his response.
Hey, Ed, I get it. The Celtics were a good team back when you were in the House of Representatives, Larry Bird and all. But guess what? The last 10 years, the Warriors have won 3 rings. I don't see how many rings the Celtics have won in the past decade. So I'll tell you what. If the Warriors win tonight, which I think they will, I'm going to give you a Draymond Green jersey, and I'm excited about you wearing that. And if the Celtics somehow pull it off, well, we'll come with Ghirardelli chocolates for you in the office. Go Dubs.
Congressman Ro Khanna posting that video Wednesday before the game. Boston did win, and now the Celtics lead the Warriors in the 2022 NBA Finals. 2-1, best-of-7 series. Game 4 is Friday in Boston. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Get more Washington's top stories sent to you every day by subscribing to C-SPAN's evening newsletter, Word for Word. Sign up at c-span.org/connect. Have a good night.